Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
Angelique Kidjo is a symbol of Africa's creativity, energy and beauty. Her music is a unique blend of her own very West African heritage with funk, jazz, Latin music and much more. From the small country of Benin, she's won awards and recognition around the world. But Angelique Kidjo is also a champion of African causes. Through her work with the UN and her own foundation, she's travelled across the continent, raising money at times of disaster.
Every dollar counts, every life counts. Thank you so much.
But above all, campaigning for the right of more girls to go to school.
School is the only solution that we have to beat poverty.
Angelique Kidjo, now in her mid-50s, has just written her life story. She's still recording and touring at a hectic pace, but where does she see her musical career going from here? And with Africa facing new challenges, from Ebola to Islamist extremists opposed to girls' education, does she feel optimistic about the future of her beloved continent? We'll find out as Angelique Kidjo talks to Al Jazeera. Thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera, Angelique Kidjo. Let me ask you first, you've been performing for decades now. Anyone who's ever seen you on stage or heard your music is blown away by your energy. Is that energy, that enthusiasm, still there all these years later?
If it's not there, I'm not there. It's part of me. I mean, I grew up in a country that is poor, you know, my country, and in a middle-class family where laughter have always been at the center of the house. Even though sometimes it was very hard, even when somebody passed away, we cry and then we continue laughing because life continues. And I think I was born with this energy of my mother. My mother is 87 years old, and I always tell everybody she has more energy than I do.
And you wanted to be a singer, a performer, at a very young age. It was something that you knew was right for you.
My father said I used to sing before I speak, so I take his word because he's the only one that can say that. I don't have any memory prior to 5 or 6 years, so that should be it. That should be it. I mean, I've always really been murmuring and singing all the time. When I was playing, everything I was doing, I would be singing because it kept me company.
But when your career started to take off in Benin, there was some disapproval, wasn't there? A young woman on stage. Some people said some pretty nasty things.
Yeah, I mean, when I started singing at 6, everybody find it cute. Everybody was like, raving about it. Oh, you see that little girl, everybody giving me candy here, congratulating, want to hug me, and then puberty kick in, and then it becomes a different story. You from one day to the other, you go to the hate zone, insult, bad word zone, where you don't understand where it comes from. What triggered people calling me prostitute suddenly, and you start struggling with it. And luckily for me, I was surrounded by a great family. My grandmother's, my mother's mother was home when I walked in one day, and then I was crying. I could barely speak. I was like, I don't want to sing anymore.
Because of the insults people.
And I don't want to go back to school to be bullied anymore. And she said, tell me the story. What's going on? Why you make such a drastic decision right now at this moment? So I told her what was going on, and she said to me, you know what? I won't tell you what to do because it's not up to me to tell you what you have to do. But I have a piece of advice for you. You do whatever you want to do with it, and it's your decision down the line. And she said, in this life, you have to understand that you cannot be accepted nor loved by everybody, and it goes both ways. You have people that you like, but more than people that you don't like. I mean, that's just the way life is. If you let people decide your fate, then you have no personality, you have no life, because you're gonna just become the magnet of the frustration. Be who you are. Did your parents tell you not to sing? No. Did anybody criticize you in this house because you sing? No. She said, then what do you care about somebody that you don't know, that tell you nasty stuff out of jealousy, and you want to decide not to sing? And I went back and I rethink about it. I said, you know what? From now on, I'll let people speak. They have the right to it.
You became famous in Benin, but it was quite a different and a difficult political atmosphere at that time, late 70s, early 80s. You had to praise sing effectively for the man who was in control, the president.
Yeah, I mean, before the military regime arrived, Benin was a place where you can listen to the Beatles, from the Beatles to Rolling Stone, from the Rolling Stone to Aretha Franklin, from the Aretha Franklin to the traditional musician in Benin, or Ebenezer Obey from Nigeria, or Aishola Aruna. All those. It was a melting pot of music that was coming through the radio. I mean, the music from Cameroon, the music from Zaire at that time, Democratic Republic of Congo, and it was just French music. Music was just you just put the radio on and you can travel to the country where the music was coming from. And then the military regime arrived and it becomes a dead silent country where they install paranoia in you. It's amazing to see the change from one day to the other, where my father come and say, from now on, this house of ours that used to be a free speech zone, we gotta be careful. No one will talk about politics anymore. So you don't trust anybody anymore, even your friends, your parents, your brothers. It's just like they destroy completely the trust of people because you don't know who is spy or who's not spy.
So you decided to leave. You went to Paris, you turned up in Europe, penniless. No one had heard of you here, even if you were famous in Benin. You encountered racism. It was a very tough time in your life.
Oh yeah, it's a very tough time, but that's when you realize the capacity of adaptation and survival of the human being. We have that capacity of adapting very quickly in order to survive. And also, based on the education that I received, I know that racism is out of ignorance. So I tell people, you don't like me, it's your choice. Don't insult me, I won't insult you. I don't care about your skin color. If you're being stupid right now, it's because you decide to be stupid. If you decide to be a little bit more clever, you will just listen to yourself speak and you're gonna be ashamed of yourself and get into a corner. And those moments where when you realize that the education that your parents have given you comes in handy, because you don't take it too personal, it's hurtful, but on the other hand, you understand that the other person that is hating you have other issues, and you're just there, and because you're there at that moment, you are taking all his frustration out of him. It was difficult, but at the same time, for me, it was interesting. Very interesting. Why? Because suddenly I said to myself, I woke up one day, I said, now I'm an adult, for real. I have to pay rent. I have to work for my food. When I was in Benin, I don't have to worry about those. I have to buy my school furniture. I have to find clothes for myself, shoes. Shoes was, talking about thing you have to adapt is wearing closed shoes all the time. Most of the time. You only wear sandals summertime. And my whole life, I've wear open shoes. So here I am trying to wear boots. And my feet was like, not gonna happen. So I have to adapt to a lot of stuff, wearing coats, where I never wear a coat before.
So you must feel great sympathy when you see young Africans making that same journey today from Africa to Europe.
I feel for them. I mean, that the way I understand and I recognize when African just arrive in Europe is by looking at their face, the smile on their face. And when the smile is gone, you know they have faced the harsh reality of the Western world where they are not welcome anyway, nowhere, pretty much. And it is really, for me, it's always a way of balancing things all the time. If the countries in Africa could develop themselves, create jobs for their people, you will have less young immigrants here.
I mean, it must break your heart because literally every day young Africans are dying to reach this continent. They're drowning in the Mediterranean, suffering as they cross the Sahara.
Yeah, it is dreadful. It is shameful, not only to the African nation, but to the rich countries too. Because poverty have been the base on which they do business in Africa. The deal they sign with the government in Africa, every government that signed a deal with any colonizing country is not for the benefits of the people. It's the benefit of the rich countries. So how do you keep a balance? Create a society that is fair for the young kids of the rich country and all the poor country, because the poverty is coming back here too, because it's not trickling down to create a fairer society. So the question that I always ask today, as we are seeing the Islamic State unfolding in front of us, ISIS, what bring our young kid from the UK, from Europe, from America to join ISIS? What did we do wrong for them not to live and fight for this democracy, as imperfect as it is, for them to say, where I come from, there's still things we can do to make it better for us and have a future here. Why did they disenchanted so much that they are willing to go to the extreme of extreme? The question is not asked here. Everybody want to fight ISIS. Why can't we just do something better for people and remove the legitimacy of all those crazy extremists that are there just for the pleasure of killing people?
Well, let's talk
and
about
for power.
Let's talk about your advocacy work in Africa. I know it matters a lot to you.
That's why am I doing advocacy work? Because I want the next generation of African women and African boys to become a better leaders, to be the agent of change that they want to see by educating them, giving education to young girls, bring girls, them to bring boys to education. We need today in Africa to have an education system that incorporate into the curriculum gender inequality in school. For boys to understand that talented girls, to get them leave the school is not an option anymore, that both of them have the responsibility of building a country, that a woman's brain is as important as a man's brain.
So it must break your heart when you see a movement like Boko Haram in northern Nigeria wreaking havoc on, well, all young people, in fact, but specifically trying to get girls out of school. How do you explain what's happening there?
I mean, as a mother, it's heartbreaking. I don't even want to think 1 second that I can put myself in the shoes of the mothers of those girls. The question and the problem we have in Africa is the status of a girl. When a child is born girl, her life is less important than a boy's life.
So this is not the West's fault. This is something within African society that you think needs to change.
We have to deal, absolutely deal, with what is the status of a girl. The girl have the right to go to school, to university. What is the age of a child, a teenager and a woman? Secondary education is a game changer in Africa, because when girls stay 3 years in the secondary education, they will not go back and marry an old man that the father have chosen for them. When you educate girls in secondary education, not only that the GDP of the country rises, you reduce child mortality drastically, you reduce sexual violence, abuse of any sort, because women, those girls know their rights. And you start creating wealth, because the women in Africa, when they have money, they invest in their family, their community, and their country. And it's proven today that if you give secondary education and tertiary education to women, the GDP of the country will rise up. That's where the danger is for a group like Boko Haram. Because if you educate women, you educate men, you educate the village, you educate everything, the component of what makes a society stable.
And there will be people watching this, Angelique, who will say, what right does she, a singer, have to tell us how to restructure our society? I mean, she's just a celebrity.
I'm not a celebrity. I'm an African person before being a celebrity. And I grew up in Benin. And my father is an African man. And my father never ever said that because I'm a woman, I cannot have an opinion. Because I was a girl, I don't have right to go to the school. He makes sure that no one stand in front of him telling him not to put his girl to school. My father will fight till his last drop of blood in front of anybody that will come to his house and say, get your daughter to be married. He refused. He said, they are not merchandises, they are human beings. I want them to go to school. I want them to make choices for themselves. I don't want to be the father that's going to be called every time something happens. No, I want them to be responsible. He teach us, since we were born, boys and girls, to be responsible for our words, our actions, and to stand for it. We do good, we stand for the reward, and we do bad, we stand for the consequences. So therefore, no one in Africa can tell me, because I'm a singer, I don't have the right to speak up for girls. Because I was raised in Benin, I was raised in Africa with a father that believed in the potential of girl. Never he told my mom once, don't speak back to me or don't do anything you want to do. Because he believed that if our mother is happy, he's the most happiest man on the planet.
And you have the courage to say that to an African president who might be part of the problem.
I will. They know that. I'm not going to make this up. They know that. What I'm saying, they know it. It's the will to do it that is not there. The comfort of not having any challenge to deal with is creating this. But some countries are taking steps in this direction. We have to turn around and look at those countries that are taking the steps to do this right and encourage them to become an example, to become a poster countries for other countries, for their peer to see and to follow up. We can't just keep on dwelling in the problems and the negativity. We have to see what is done in other countries also and give it as an example and talk about it enough to emulate over leaders that want to do that. I mean, the African leaders, a lot of them wants to do things, but do they have the capacity of doing it? It brings me back to the deal we have signed with the country that colonized us. How far can we go in our will of developing our countries? If we wanna build road, who's gonna come and build it? No African societies. It's gonna be an European or Western society that gonna come and get the market and charge us more than they can charge anybody. So it doesn't matter how whatever the direction we go to, we still at the mercy of the rich country that decide our fate. So, I mean, the leaders of the rich country have to take the responsibility too. They can't sit on their chair saying, this one is corrupted, this one is doing this. They are part of the problem in Africa.
You have fought so hard for Africa's image and to project Africa's image around the world. We have now an Ebola outbreak in West Africa. How much do you worry that that is hurting Africa's image?
I'll put the question back to you. If Ebola has an outbreak in the Western world, will the media in the Western world treat it the same way?
Are you unhappy with the way the Western media has treated the Ebola outbreak?
I mean, all the phantasma comes back. Africa, the dark place, Africa this, Africa that. I mean, I was in a taxi in New York and I was talking to the driver. The driver said, where do you come from? You have an accent. I said, I'm from West Africa. The first word that come out of his mouth is Ebola. I mean, that's what the media are doing.
What did you say to him?
I tell him, no, I have no Ebola, otherwise I won't be in this country. Do you think that everybody in Africa have Ebola? I was giving a lecture in a primary school in Palm Beach. A little boy, 9 years old, tell me, did all the African kids, we can see the ribs? That's the image you give to people. I mean, the media have responsibility in this. The outbreak of Ebola is there. What are we doing to help strengthen the health system of those countries? We're doing nothing. We are using it for political benefits. I mean, it's just like, looks like the Western is the hyena feeding on the misery of African people to make themselves elected or to take benefit out of it. They should be shameful doing this.
But isn't it also true that there are many brave nurses and doctors who are volunteering to go to Liberia and Sierra Leone?
Absolutely. And then you have somebody that Donald Trump that said, if somebody goes and help, if the person get Ebola, he can come back. I mean, what is this? I mean, everybody's phantasma about Africa is always negative. Any success story from Africa doesn't interest any media. They are so eager and hungry for horrible story from Africa. Why? If Africa does bad, everybody do bad. People that put gas in their car, where do gas come from? Their countries? people are living large in this country and in the Western world at the cost of whose life? Instead of helping the country strengthen their health system, there are nurses, there are courageous people in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, that are working day and night to stop this outbreak. And instead of giving them courage, instead of supporting them in many different ways, we are counting how many people are dying.
It's fear, isn't it? Maybe we're afraid of this disease, and that's why people are reacting in the way you say.
But the thing is fear. Who started the fear mongering? The media. I mean, Ebola have existed for the last 20 years. Why don't anybody come up with a vaccination? The pharmaceutical firm, they knew about it. As long as it's in Africa, it's killing African people, nobody cares. And the fact that it can come to their country will start moving up the ladder now to come up with something. When we say we are living in a global economy, it's true. But we also live in the global crisis and global viruses because we travel all around the world. So if there's a problem in Africa, you don't help the African people fix it, it's going to come to your doorstep. It doesn't mean that we create Ebola. We don't invent Ebola. Ebola is just a disease that exists there. Like, we're going to be blamed also of inventing malaria too? Or we're going to be blamed for everything? I mean, people forget the history. How many people have died when the Spanish were in Mexico? When they bring a disease that wipe people out, the Indians out.
Well, on a more...
Africa is not just diseases. Africa is beautiful.
Of course it is. And on a more optimistic note, I think many economists now say Africa is rising.
It is.
Is it?
It is. It's the only part of the world where you have growth. Europe is sinking. Everybody's sinking. We're going up. And then, of course, here comes Ebola, and then they can put us back on the level where they can control it. It's not going to work anymore. There's one thing that is a game changer is internet. The young kid in Africa, they know what time is it today. It's going to be very difficult to play the game that we used to play 20 or 50 years ago. Today it won't happen anymore.
But we'll just return. We're coming towards the end of the interview, but let's just go back to music. In fact, your music is a celebration not just of Africa, but of connectivity. You're so interested in the African diaspora in Brazil, in the Caribbean, jazz, the blues,
everywhere.
In North America.
I'm interested in every human being because we are all linked.
I wonder if that has something to do with where you're from, the coast of Benin, Ouida, where tragically so many millions of Africans were taken as slaves. Does that feed into your world vision in some way?
Absolutely. The music of the world comes from Africa. Without the blues, there's no rock and roll. It's the same chord. Rock and roll is the same chord as the blues. That's just the way it is. Facts. I'm not making it up. African music have transformed the music of the world today. They call it world music, whatever they call it.
You don't like that term, do you?
No, but without African music, we won't be talking about pop stars. We won't be talking R&B, soul music, jazz. None of that will exist without the input of the slave that have been brought from Africa. They didn't want to go. They did not immigrate by their own wish. They've been forced to leave the continent. Instead of building their continent, they're building other people's. And they bring music to it. Music have helped the slave to keep the dignity as human being, to communicate, to still see that they have a soul, that they're not the animal that people are reducing them to. For me, music is a groundbreaker. It breaks silence. It breaks cliche. That's why it is so powerful. Every time I do music collaboration, I always learn from somebody else and somebody else learn from me. Music has helped me, my microphone, I call it my weapon of mass loving. Everywhere I've been, people have welcomed my music. Even though they don't speak my language, every time I start singing, people cry, people laugh, people dance. That's what I want us to realize. We are one family. Within that umbrella of the human family that we are, we're diverse. We speak different language, we have different view on things, we like different food. It's okay. That's the challenge of humanity. And I like it. I like the diversity of it because I know that till I die, I will be learning every day from people.
Angelique Kidjo, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.